Welcome to the StarPodTrek comic scene with your hosts, Jeff and Tony.
Hi, I'm Jeff Wiley.
And I'm Tony Barletta.
Welcome to the comic scene on StarPodTrek.
Great to be back. How you doing, Jeff?
Good, Tony. I know, you and I talk almost every day, but we haven't done an episode for a long time, and grateful to StarPodTrek for having us back. But how have you been? And, I know that you were probably neck deep in preparation for Dragon Con and then the execution of Dragon Con over Labor Day weekend here in Atlanta. How did that go for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a ton of work because, as always, we had lots of awesome guests that I had to program for panels. I think I came up with like 48 panels, and we had some cancellations, a few more than usual, and that did make it more challenging than usual. Had to keep me on my toes as to how to shuffle the programming around to make sure the panel still made sense with who was on it. So yeah, I think I had great volunteers, and I think I came up with some really, really great ideas. I think the crowds were engaged, and I think everybody just loved being able to have Dragon Con since we didn't the year before. We had really powerful, incredible guests like John Romita Jr. for the first time ever in Atlanta. He was excited. I heard John Romita and Scott Hanna tell me how much they enjoyed panels I moderated for them. That's great when you hear that back from the big guest that they love the panels you did for him. We had Chris Claremont, creator of most of everyone's favorite X-Men stories.
I started to say this is the first time he had come back for a long time.
Yeah, about 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw Chris Claremont had filled one of the largest rooms there in the Hyatt. It's great seeing that many people show up for comic book panels. It didn't used to be that way back in the day. I don't even remember if, they started letting us use those rooms before I became director for big comic book guests. And then we had the biggest room ever in the Hyatt for a comic book panel that was size of like 2 rooms. And it was pretty good sized crowd. I think the biggest crowd ever for a comic book panel for Marvel, years gone by when we had Romita and Claremont. We had Carl Potts on there. We had, who was an executive editor at Marvel for many years. Peter David. We had Linda Lessman Reinhold, who was a colorist there for many years at Marvel. So many big names on that panel and so many stories to be told. It was just an incredible experience to listen to all of them. And Bill Reinhold was a guest this year as well, and he was great. I put on a Punisher panel because I love the Punisher comics with Carl Potts and Bill Reinhold, and really finding out why Carl Potts decided to give him his own title and spotlight, and that led to the Punisher becoming who we know today, because before Carl Potts became editor of that miniseries in the 80s with Stephen Grant and Mike Zeck, nobody really thought of the Punisher as a leading man. The rest is history. So yeah, it was just so many different panels, and everybody seemed really engaged in all of them.
I know that the creators that were in town for the weekend signed tons of different books and in various formats, and that was one of the subjects that Tony and I were going to talk about tonight was comic book formats and kind of our favorite formats and why. And I'll start. I stopped picking up singles probably 4 to 5 years ago. I might pick up the occasional variant issue if I like the cover, or I'm a huge fan of blank variants, and I've talked about that on the show previously, but I have come to prefer trades and specifically oversized hardcovers.
Well, let me ask you a question. If you're
Sure.
getting a blank variant, are you paying cover for a blank, or are they raising the price on it because it's a blank?
The ones I've bought are usually cover price. Occasionally I'll buy one because, you know, just like the other single issue, they print it once and then it's gone. I've never paid more than I think $10 for a blank variant.
Mm-hmm.
And I just stockpile those. I've got a long box that is filled front to back with just blank variants. And that's meant to take to, you know, for the listener that may not know, those you take those to conventions and you commission an artist to draw on them, and it's basically a one of a kind comic, one of a kind piece of art. It's really cool. They have this firm stock paper on it. It's not the flimsy thin paper that you're used to on a comic book. It's something that can handle the inks and the pencils that are being drawn on it. But they're really cool, and I'm a big fan of those. But like by and large, I really prefer oversized hardcovers. The DC Deluxe Editions, I'm a big fan of. If I can get an omnibus with an entire story arc in it, like for example, Marvel just announced a week or two ago that they're releasing the King in Black storyline next year in omnibus format. I'll probably pick that up. But, you know,
Does it have all the tie-ins too?
It has all the tie-ins.
Oh, wow, that's got to be huge.
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive. And they're releasing, I want to say it's the same day, that they're releasing the Donny Cates Venom run also in omnibus format.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I can just go ahead and sign over my paycheck that day because
he's definitely become one of Marvel's top writers.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
With Venom and his ongoing Thor, soon to be coming out Hulk is going to be awesome too.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, he did get signed on to do that.
Yeah. I think it starts this month.
Yeah. Well, what about you? What are your preferred formats?
Well, as you know, I have an insane amount of comics and graphic novels.
Yeah.
The amount has gotten away from me. I mean, it's hard to explore. I don't really seek out graphic novels. Sometimes I acquire them. Usually, if I see them at a con and they're discounted and it looks cool, I pick it up. I think back in the day, I used to seek out graphic novels of stories I really liked, but I quit doing that just because I get so much now. So, I mean, just because it's, you know, now that I'm almost 50, the way I've always collected was weekly comics at the comic shop. So I still try to assemble the story I want through the single issues. So that's still my number one preference because I guess I'm used to it, I guess. And I love getting all the covers I want, you know, and so many, you know, especially now Marvel, DC, and even some of the indies, you can request different covers. So, you know, it's like, well, what cover is coming out this week that really excites me? You know, that helps me pick out which cover of that series I'm going to pick up. So I do try to gear more toward the singles just because I'm used to it. And then graphic novels I just pick up here and there, and it becomes it's hard to explain exactly why, but I like art books too. I mean, those are really fun.
I like those too.
So I have quite a whole shelf full of just great art books of amazing artists. And yeah, it's weird. I don't know if I even have an omnibus of anything. I can't really think of one off the top of all the things I have. I don't have an omnibus of anything, but I do have you know, collected runs of certain things, of course. But I just think of it. And for me, I guess in collecting singles, because of the way I've always done it, I'm always wanting the first print. I mean, I don't buy them to resell, but I still want the first print because as a comic collector, that's what we're geared to want.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
If a thing's hot and I miss the first print, I really usually don't have much desire for second and third prints. So it's kind of weird because like I see them listed and I'm thinking, well, who's rushing to the shop to get the second and third print? If I miss the first print and I know it's like by creators I want to read like for example, Mr. Miracle by Tom King. I knew that was going to be a great book, and I didn't expect it to sell out like it did. So it's like, well, I missed issue number 1, first print. Do I want to get a second and third print? And I thought, no, not really. So I'll just wait for the trade, and then and then save some money. So that's another way I decide to get trades is if I miss the first print.
It's funny you say that about people rushing to get the second print or the third print or what have you, because there are, as we know, there are niche markets or niche collector habits within the comic book hobby, and I see a lot of people that are selling, like for example, first appearance of Spider-Gwen, Edge of Spider-Verse number 2. But I see people. Okay, I did too, but I see a lot of people going out and like selling the third print. I'm selling the fourth print. I think they went to a 5th printing on that particular book. But in that example, the 5th printing, the later printings are worth almost as much as the first print. Nothing's ever going to be as valuable as the first print.
Right.
But it's amazing that the markets can sustain, future printings, later printings of, say, a key first appearance like that. I find that interesting. They also, in the Omnibus collectors market, an Omnibus is a reprint. Is a reprint of previous material, but there are collectors that seek out first printings of Omnibus or first printing of graphic novels.
I had no idea.
I just, like, that's not my angle. I'm picking it up because I want to read an entire story arc or a collector's run in one binded, collection. But I don't care if it's the first print or the second print or what have you.
Yeah, I think looking at my collection, I think one of the 9/11 tribute books from DC Comics is a second print, and I have it signed by quite a few people over the years. I think another odd one that's for some reason is a second or third, maybe third print, might be second, is Camelot 3000. I'm pretty sure I have it signed by Brian Baldwin when I met him. So why they were just books I wanted, so I didn't really care if it was second or third print. It was like I want the book.
Right.
I guess second and third prints. I mean, first prints is something you think about more as singles than you do for collections, for sure.
Yeah, that is a non-factor for me.
Another interesting format. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just say, like for certain stories, like my favorite Batman story of all time is The Long Halloween, and I think I have owned that story in just about every format that they have ever published it in, including the Deluxe Edition that just dropped about a month or so ago. But part of my reason for that is, one, the collecting aspect of comics, and two, I have one that I consider just my reader copy. Whenever I want to read that story again, I'll reach for that and not reach for the Absolute, the DC Absolute, which I like the idea of the Absolutes, but I like oversized, but that's a little too oversized for my taste. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I was wondering, another interesting format is, especially DC, from the last 2 years, or maybe even 2.5 years, they've been putting out a lot of, at least, there's always at least one title coming out, sometimes two or more, in oversized format. And so instead of the usual comic size edition, they have an oversized format that comes out of, it's still a thin issue, but it's more pages than a traditional comic, and it's oversized. So for example, Batman Damned number 1 was almost impossible to find. It was three issues in that format. Harley Quinn came out, Birds of Prey with Palmiotti and Amanda Conner in that format. The John Ridley did the other history of the DC universe in that format. They just put out a beautiful Catwoman book by Cliff Chang in that format.
Were those all
it's an
Black
interesting
Label?
format. Yeah, most everyone is Black Label. But it's interesting that you get this nice oversized art that's beautiful to look at in the big size. And it usually for cost-wise, it's only $6 or $7, which is sometimes only $1 more than what you're buying for a single issue.
Yeah.
So it's a really great. I think it's a great bargain for the money. And most of them are 3 to 4 issues runs that you collect in that size format. And DC's been putting out some really nice ones.
I hear a lot of. It's funny you mentioned the price, because I hear some people, an omnibus cover price tends to be anywhere between $100 and $150 on average. And I hear a lot of collectors say, well, that's an insane price to pay for a comic book. Well, if you sit and you look at what's collected in an Omni as compared to the cover price of each of the singles that's collected in there, it actually averages out to be about the same.
Sure.
It's very close to the same. The only difference is you're spreading out.
There.
Right, you're spreading out the cost over several months rather than dropping all that money at once. And there are plenty of retailers out there that are known for selling up to 40% or more off of cover price on an Omni the day that it drops.
Yeah. I mean, and you can go to a con and find pretty good deals on omnibuses too. And
oh, absolutely.
If you're omnibus hunting, yeah.
Absolutely. There's another, we're talking about collected editions, and Marvel has their Epic Collection line, which I think is the most brilliant idea that exists as far as comic or collected comic editions goes. I think that is something that could run.
So is
forever.
that one in color or black and white?
They're all in color,
okay.
And what they do is they have mapped out. Each book contains 20 or so issues. I think it's about 20 issues. And what they have done is they, let's take Amazing Spider-Man, for example. They will map out from issue number 1 all the way up to, they're in the 90s somewhere. What they do is they kind of avoid all the stories that have been printed over and over and over again ad nauseum, but they will collect and number other runs numerically, and at the end of it, you're going to have the entire Amazing Spider-Man run from issue number 1 all the way up to wherever they decide to cut off. Like I said, I think they're in the 90s, the 1990s right now. But there's no rhyme or reason to how they release the books. In other words, they might release volume 1, and then 3 to 6 months later they'll release volume 17, and then they'll come back to number 5. Like they just, if they have a method to their madness, I'm not aware of it. But it's a really cool format if you want to go back and read some of the classic stuff, and Marvel has touched on just about all of their classic characters. They're very, very popular with collectors.
The one that I always gravitated to over the years was Modern Masterworks, and it was something started, I think, like the late 80s, early 90s. Marvel put those out, and they would reprint the Silver Age, the biggest heroes in the Silver Age, starting at, like you said, issue 1 in those volumes. And they started out as hardcover. I've also found, like, Barnes & Noble had some soft covers, so it's a great way to pick up, because I never read the old Silver Age X-Men until I got those hardcovers. I never read the old Silver Age Daredevil until I got those hardcovers. It's quite different from the modern ones that we're used to, so it's interesting to see where the origins of the character came from. And DC did the similar with their, I think it's DC Archives editions. I have some really great archives too, like Plastic Man. I mean, those are some really great Golden Age stories. The Plastic, and Shazam too. It was those are some really wild Golden Age books, and it's great having them in a format like that to look at.
Now, aren't the Marvel Masterworks, don't they do something like they enhance the art, or they do something specific with the art? I've read. The Marvel Masterworks,
the reproduction looks terrific. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what's done, but the reproduction's terrific. Yeah,
I remember reading something about that not that long ago, actually. Like that was the entire point of Marvel Masterworks, was not only to reprint the material, but they were really focusing on the art reproduction.
Mm-hmm. The one that doesn't make sense to me is the DC showcase, and I see them all over the place.
You mean the coloring books?
They're great. They're great. Yeah, they're great stories, but and there's lots of material. But why are they in black and white? And why are they like printed on like cheap newsprint in black and white?
I don't understand that either. I bought at a convention years ago, not knowing what I was buying with the DC Showcase. It was the first and last one I ever bought. I bought a Green Lantern Silver Age Showcase for $5. And I thought, oh, this will be fun to read. I got home and I was like, what the hell? Like, it was all, like you said, black and white, newsprint. Like, that is not the least bit appealing to me.
Yeah. I wonder who that line appeals to, because it's just not appealing to me.
Only thing I can figure is, like, maybe a gateway reader, somebody that is interested in comics and doesn't want to drop a lot and, you know, to get started. I mean, I could see, I don't know. Like I said, they're oversized coloring books to me.
Another talking about graphic novels, another one I really like that, you know, I pick up when I can, is especially DC highlights certain creators. You know, I have all three of the hardcover Batman Neil Adams ones. I have at least, I think I have one of the Gene Colan Batman works, and I have two of the Jim Aparo ones. I didn't get the first one because the first one's going for lots of money now because it's hard to find. His Batman works, but it's great having all his stories from one creator in one volume, and also the Jose Luis Garcia Lopez Superman volume. That's a great one I have too. I really like the way they collect one individual creator's work like that.
I have that Neil Adams Batman that you're talking about in omnibus format, actually.
Oh, cool.
He's probably my all-time favorite Batman artist. I just feel like when he draws Batman, when you see a Neil Adams Batman, you feel like Neil Adams gets it. Like he gets what the character is supposed to look like.
And you know what's strange to me? I mean, I agree totally, but I always wanted to meet him because he was my favorite Batman artist, and I'm so glad I got to, and I got this signed over the years before he started, you know, charging $50 a signature. But,
$50, man.
I know. That was a lot cheaper when I first met him. But, you know, it's just great meeting him, getting them signed. But looking back on it, like the old comics I had when I was a kid, I don't think he drew many of them, which is strange. He did this oversized, treasury size Ra's al Ghul Batman that was one of my favorite comics of all time, where you open it up and it shows Robin dead on the ground and Batman's over top of him screaming, and Ra's al Ghul right behind him. And that was a collection of the first appearance of Ra's al Ghul, like the first 4 or 5 issues. And he did all that art, and I loved that as a kid. He did Superman Muhammad Ali, and he did there's a record I had, a Batman Man-Bat record. I'm pretty sure he did the art on the cover of that. But other than that,
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, other than that, I think most of my Batman that I loved was other artists that were imitating his style, which is strange So I didn't realize that at the time.
No, that is strange. Like you don't pick up on that influence until later on, and you're a little more
Right.
cognizant.
I mean, looking at it now as an adult, it's like Irv Novak was one who did a lot of the Batman that I grew up with.
Yeah.
David V. Reed, I think, was another. It's just that they basically were imitating Neil, of course.
Oh, yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah, I agree with you on the price of his signature. I would love to have had Neil Adams sign that omnibus that I own, but and I've paid $50 for a signature before, and I've paid more than that to get a photo with a celebrity, but I can't fathom dropping $150 on the omnibus and then asking, paying another $50 to ask him to sign it. I can't bring myself to do it.
Yeah. I'm glad I got
$5 or
so
$10, I would have done it.
I'm glad I got so many back when he was 5 or 10.
Yeah. There's a shipping crisis going on all over the world as we are recording this, and the comics industry has not been spared of that. There has been delayed shipping right now with omnibuses or omnibuy. I'm not sure what the plural for that is, and other things. But there's been since the pandemic began, and I don't necessarily think that this is related to the pandemic, but there have been major shakeups in comic book distribution in the last 2 years. Major shakeups. Diamond was pretty much the only game in town, and then the last couple of years, that's not really the case anymore.
Yeah, we know that last year, right during the crux of the pandemic, when comic stores opened again, a new distributor was found. Ford and DC jumped on board. So DC is using Midtown Comics with a different name, but it's coming out of the store Midtown Comics out of New York. And everybody gets their DC Comics exclusively from them. And just within the last month or two, many comic shops have been moved over to Penguin Books to fulfill their Marvel orders. So Diamond is seeing the loss of the big two, and it's wondering how that's going to affect Diamond. I know my store, Diamond Comics, are always late, and that could just be, the FedEx issue or the UPS issue, and they're just always constantly having problems with the distributing them that way. But what's the future of Diamond going to be now that they lost these big two? And comic shops have gotten used to competition with Diamond, and they don't need them for the big two.
Do you think that in the case of Marvel that Disney has some say in that, or do you think this is strictly a Marvel decision?
That's a good question. I would guess that everything at Marvel has to be okayed by Disney. In the same way that everything at DC would have to be okayed by Time Warner. But it also at the same time, I don't think I don't think they look at the field of comics as closely as they do other fields. I think they kind of let them run themselves as much as they can, because they probably don't. The corporate people at those companies probably don't know much about the comic book world, and they kind of let the people that know comics probably make the call. But I'm sure they've changed a lot about how their product is distributed to stores.
I think you're pretty well on point. I don't think Disney cares about Marvel Comics so much as they care about Marvel comic characters, right, and how they can put them into, films and TV shows and things
cartoons.
like that. Right, cartoons. And that's true of DC, in all fairness. That's true of AT&T and DC. I don't think AT&T cares about comics so much as they care about comic characters and how they can best, merchandise them.
Right, right. I mean, it could have been a decision they made and said, cut out Diamond and let's make more money. Let's go a different route.
Yeah. I think that has a lot to do with it. I mean, money rules the world, let's be honest. And I think if it eliminates the middleman, why wouldn't they do it?
Yeah, very true. And after so many decades of, Diamond being the only game in town, it's interesting seeing what's going to happen now that you have Midtown Comics and Penguin distributing the big two.
Yeah.
How's Diamond in the long run going to do with just the indies? And, the big indies, they have Image, they have Boom, they have IDW, and all the small press.
Yeah. So, in previous episodes, Tony and I have done a segment, and we call it What You're Reading. And we just talk about whatever is at the top of our stack right now, our comic book stack. So, Tony, what you reading?
Well, something that recently came out ties into something you were talking about. All these decades later, we got an awesome follow-up to Long Halloween, finally, from Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. Put out a Long Halloween special. It's great seeing it come out. There's an animated movie that just came out. I definitely need to dive into that. I've been too busy the last couple of weeks, but I definitely want to check it out as soon as I can and see how the animated version is. But it's great seeing a follow-up with, the original creative team to such a great comic book.
Yeah, I want to dive into that animated as well, because like I said, the Long Halloween is definitely my favorite Batman story. I don't think it's a good starting point for Batman, but like if you have dove in a little bit and you want some really, like, to me it's a perfect Batman story.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's excellent. Long
and
Halloween is excellent.
The animated version, they did two parts, so it's basically going to be like a 3-hour animated movie over two.
They did the
parts.
same. They did the same thing when they released The Dark Knight Returns.
Right.
They did it in a 2-part, and then they eventually released it as, what did they call it? I forget what they called it. They eventually released it as one film.
Okay.
But they called it
the
special
2 parts.
edition or something. I don't remember exactly what they called it.
It's great having HBO, because HBO has a lot of those, and I can watch Long Halloween there. But for whatever reason, they don't get all of them. So there's stuff I want to watch that isn't on there, like the JSA one should be really cool, but it's not on there. And the Batman Soul of the Dragon 70s style movie I wanted to check out, but it's not on there either. So what about you? What are you reading?
Well, since we're talking about omnibuses, whatever, I am actually in the middle of reading the Batman Black and White Omnibus.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Batman Black and White, and I know we were just ripping on DC Showcase and Black and White comics a few minutes ago, but the Black and White Batman series, it was an anthology series where each issue had a handful of stories, each one, 8, 9 pages long tops, and they were all really great stories. Different creators contributed to the book, and they're all collected in this one omnibus, and it's really good read. I've really enjoyed it so far. Perfect if you have a short attention.
Does it collect all the Batman Black and Whites?
Up to what was the year? 2015, I think, because they just relaunched it recently. I think.
Yeah, they did.
Just relaunched. Yeah.
Originally,
so, like,
back in the day,
the relaunch isn't in there.
Yeah, originally back in the day it was 4 issues. I
Right.
remember it had a Jim Lee cover. When I met Jim Lee for the only time, I got him to sign that for me. And that was free, by the way. And so I had that four issue series in comic format was the original black and white. Then I think they came out as backup stories at the back of certain comics, and I have the graphic novel volume 2. I have a graphic novel volume 3. I think those are the collections of those backup stories. And then they went to just like a 6-part miniseries in comic format, and I have those. They came out after those. And then the ones we talked about, the recent edition. So it's a strange. They're amazing stories, and they do come out in strange volumes like the 4-parter, and then you have the backups that are collected, and then you have another miniseries. So it's cool to have all those in one omnibus.
Yeah, it's a really cool collection, and the stories so far have been really good. There hasn't been a miss yet. There hasn't been, like, that I have read, there hasn't been a miss yet. So, yeah, if you are a Batman fan, definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, of the ones I've read, I know that I think all the creators were bringing their A games when they all did those.
Well, Tony, do you have any closing thoughts?
It's great to record another episode with you, Jeff, and it's always awesome talking comics. And there's more product coming out now than ever. It's interesting. It's an interesting time to be a comic book fan, and interesting seeing how the industry changes. And we'll do it again next time.
It sounds good to me. I love talking comics with you, and I know this is a topic that you and I can talk about for hours, and never run out of things to say. For the comic scene, I'm Jeff Wiley.
I'm Tony Barlotta.
Thanks for listening. Give us a like, give us a share, follow StarPodLog all over social media, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the force be with you. Nanu Nanu.